Guys, our friends at Keeps cannot wait to get you looking and feeling good this summer. Keeps is an online subscription service that makes it easy and affordable for men to treat male pattern balding from the comfort of their home. So many guys start to lose their hair and they lose their confidence because of it. Not anymore. The best thing about Keeps is how affordable and discreet their process is. Keeping your hair is now super accessible. Keeps offers treatments that are clinically proven to work. Keeps has both of the FDA-approved hair loss treatment options, as well as a 2-in-1 treatment that combines both treatments. Whether you're looking to prevent hair loss, stimulate hair growth, or just take better care of the hair that you had, Keeps has you covered. Keeps has helped nearly 1 million men to keep their hair. And they've got over 5,000 5-star reviews. I'd say you can't go wrong with Keeps. Hair loss stops with Keeps. For a special offer to get you started, go to keeps.com/Chael Sonnen. Or just click on the link I put in the description. That's KEEPS.com/Chael Sonnen. Boy, did Jon Jones ever change conversation and make the rules of conversation complicated when he brought up Alex Pereira. I mean, I don't submit for you that Jon Jones had a very clear strategy here. I submit for you that he threw out Alex Pereira and it's just like everything just happened in a positive light for him to come off of that. Like, it's being completely dismissed. Nobody is supporting the idea of Jon Jones versus Alex Pereira. And Jon even threw a little something special on it. He said if that happens, there is no way to not consider the winner the GOAT. It would be impossible to argue against it. Pick that apart, guys. It was a stupid thing Jon Jones just said. Pick him apart. It's a stupid thing that he just said. Okay. There's a whole bunch of reasons, but start with number one. Go. I know it's wrong. I know that statement is not right. Because, do you see the problem? I know it's half right. I mean, I know if Alex Pereira moves up to heavyweight and defeats Jon Jones and becomes heavyweight champion, Alex Pereira gets called the GOAT, for sure. He would have been middleweight, light heavyweight, and heavyweight. For sure, it's over. It's over. You couldn't say anything else. Everything, and not only would Alex Pereira be the GOAT, everything you thought you knew as an expert in the sport or a fan of the sport that's followed it, turns out you're wrong. It would turn out you're wrong because he is so blatantly unwell-rounded and he's so blatantly is stand-up heavy in comparison to his own skill sets of jiu-jitsu and a non-existent wrestling background. So it would literally make you think and rethink every philosophy you feel that you have learned. But when we get past all that, yeah, you'd have to put him as the greatest of all time. Sure. Yeah. Now, you wouldn't have to do that for Jon, I don't think. But the point is, in Jon's statement, he's got his 50% there already because of Alex. So if it's good enough for Alex, it seems as though it should be good enough for Jon, right? But we don't ever hold Jon to that same fair standard. And in large part, even though it irritates Jon, it's because so many people already think he's the GOAT. Like, if Jon entered that ring, you're going to have this saying that he's the GOAT. So one more win, as impressive it is, he leaves the same way he entered, right? So it turns into one of those things. But then, of course, because you have the anti-Jon people. So the anti-Jon people have to go against whatever it is Jon called for. You have to. It blindly wouldn't matter what stance he was going to take. If you're anti-Jon, you have to take the opposite stance. But it's very difficult to say Jon versus Pereira doesn't make sense and then bring size into it. If you were one of those people that liked the idea of Pereira versus Aspinall, which had legs. I mean, it had legs. UFC 300 was approaching, and a main event wasn't in place. We all thought it wasn't announced. We later found out it wasn't in place. And you had Pereira calling for Aspinall, and you had Aspinall accepting the challenge against Pereira. I mean, you just got real close. When two guys agree to fight, there's always an unforeseen that we don't know. There's some politics, bureaucracy, some money. There's something behind the scenes that we don't know. But outside of that, when two guys want to fight and they agree to it publicly, the fight gets made. When two guys agree to fight and nobody else is calling for either guy. Like Surreal isn't in the process of calling for Aspinall as Aspinall accepts Pereira's challenge. And at 205 pounds, it was like somebody wasn't coming after Pereira. Nobody was talking about Pereira, and nobody was talking about Aspinall, and they found each other. Oh, by the way, the main event of 300 is still open. Like, that had legs. It lasted almost 2 weeks before the boss stepped forward and said, no, not doing it. Oh, and then, by the way, they did something kind of similar. They at least kept Pereira and his title on the line in the main event spot. Like, they weren't that far off. And if you were a supporter of the idea of Great Big Tom, right? I mean, Tom's up there at that heavyweight limit versus Pereira, who's never, we're told he's big. We've read on Instagram how big he is, but we've never seen it on a scale. Never officially seen that on a scale. And if that size discrepancy was not a problem and you were a supporter, you find yourself biting your tongue saying that Pereira versus Jones can't and won't take place. It's a very interesting move by Jon, because what it does effectively is it changes the narrative from Jon versus Tom. And that's the biggest thing that is the issue, or that is biting at Jon Jones. He's hearing from people, you're scared or you won't fight Tom. We all want you to fight Tom. Why won't you give us what we want? Like, he's got to hear that. He's kind of looking around going, okay, first off, I'm hurt. Second off, can't tell you where I accept the fight or not because I haven't been offered it. And third, I have a guy. I get Steven. Like Jon Jones is in a nearly impossible position, right? But the narrative, which is what's bothering him, in many ways, he has changed. I mean, many ways, okay, we got Jon versus Stipe, but let's just say you had one more. Let's just say everybody would have said, all right, Magic won, I won it against Aspinall, but would you now? I don't know the answer to that, but would you now? If Jon is going to do one more after Stipe, win or lose, do you want to see it against Aspinall or do you want to see it against Pereira? And once you give your answer and once you come to that conclusion, you'll understand that I just tricked you because none of it was my point. My point was you're not absolutely dead set locked in on Jon versus Tom. And the argument that Jon's legacy is going to be totally different if he does not specifically fight Tom, all of a sudden you realize that isn't so. It's just something to say. That isn't the one that the world needs to see and the world is waiting for, and that you're just not going to be able to be the same as a fan going through life, and you're going to be irritated at Jon because you wanted to see it so badly. All of a sudden you start to realize it's just another fight. It's just another one. And it does make the narrative interesting. And I don't know how I would number that, by the way. I mean, that round robin, and I get to see that every which way. Am I more excited to see Jon versus Aspinall? Am I more excited to see Jon versus Pereira? Would I be more excited to see Pereira versus Aspinall? And it's a very interesting round robin. And of the round robin, you have two light heavyweights, right? Pereira and Jon are both light heavyweights that are both pointing their finger in the chest of a heavyweight. Now, I don't blame Tom Aspinall, and he can only fight one person at a time. But you have two light heavyweights that are inserting themselves at heavyweight, and not a single heavyweight has said or done anything about it. Heavyweight has always sucked, but there's a perception that they're tough guys. And now the perception seems to be dimmed when you have two light heavyweights, not just one, two of them, in your conversation, stealing your fights wanting your moments, putting their finger in your chest, and not one single heavyweight under contract has stepped forward to tell these small guys to go back down to the littler weights and keep the perception alive. So my overall message after 8 minutes and 58 seconds is to every one of you heavyweights, you suck.